America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. It was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it. Good evening and welcome to America's Mayor live from New York. Tomorrow, we'll be live from somewhere else. We're not going to tell you. Maybe we call it a cross-examiner he is. Sometimes he even puts little electric prods under my chair in order to get things out of me. So let me start off with the thing I'm most troubled about. The thing that I'm most troubled about is that with the conclusion now of the Durham report and the various ridiculous Democrat spins on it, like it doesn't show anything, it doesn't really nothing, and then the reality that what it shows is devastating. Probably not to everyone, obviously, due entirely to Durham and Barr in different measures of responsibility. Durham, many people say, well, Durham is a terrific prosecutor because he's so careful. Well, prosecutors have to be careful to prosecute only guilty people. And we've seen the danger of that with Bragg and the Mueller maniac Democrats and stuff like that. But a prosecutor can't be so careful that justice isn't done or that a whole country isn't screwed. And the end result on my judgment of Durham, now and historically, is he let us down horribly by not putting this out before the 2020 election. Now, you tell me it couldn't be done, and I tell you bullshit, because I did it, and I've done it. I did a whole report clearing a cabinet member approved by the court after scrupulous examination and sending people off to Japan and elsewhere, getting the reports back and going myself. Another case, I went to myself to Nicaragua and right after an earthquake in order to get the information myself. I read through it carefully now, again, and I don't see that the major part of that couldn't have been done before 2020. You certainly would have found out before 2020 that the entire Russian collusion plot was not only false, which by and large Mueller established, although many of the left didn't accept it. Many of the commentators on television didn't accept it. They said they still believe that Trump was involved with the Russians. To this day, Shifty Schiff says that. Of course, to this day, he's never disclosed the witnesses that he has. What this did, in addition to that, however, first of all, it's beyond any doubt, once you finish this report, that the Russian collusion charge is not only not true, what this adds to Mueller is it was purchased. It's a novel. It was paid for and created in Ukraine to a large extent, not only in U.S., and that three people created it in varying degrees, possibly four. The one Steele, called the Steele dossier. The second, a fellow named Igor Danchenko. The third, a gentleman named, and now his name escapes me for a moment. I remember the woman is Galkina, and the man is Dolan. Right. So we've got four people that really create the Steele dossier. They do that, and let's back up from there. They create, and let's go to the lowest element here. Galkinka and Dolan supply some of the information. We don't know how much. We know some because they've admitted it. We meaning the FBI, the report, makes that definitive. They also attribute other things to them that they don't necessarily accept as theirs. Danchenko supplied some of it, and Danchenko says that he did 80% of it. And then in another contradictory statement, he says that Dolan supplied nothing. Dolan originally said that, and then Dolan fessed up and gave the FBI what he supplied. So Danchenko, the FBI's trusted informant to whom they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, after it turned out he lied to them, which is going to raise a very interesting question. Why did they pay him for lying? And why do they continue to pay him after he lied? Oh, I know why. You'll know why too, very shortly. So that group does the Steele affidavit, not Steele. As I think I told you way back when I was representing Trump 4 years ago, Steele had never been to Russia in 17 years. He couldn't possibly have gathered these facts about, and let's stick with the craziest one of all, the peeing on the bed that Obama slept in when he visited Putin. That the minute you read that, don't you say, I wonder if this is a serious intelligence report or a piece of crap. And then when you read some other things, it becomes clear this is not a well-written, well thought out, serious piece of intelligence work. What you would do as a prudent person is you would try to corroborate it. They didn't try to do anything with it. They just took it and went with it whole cloth without any examination of the 40 questions it raises when you read it. Now, the Durham report is part good and part a cover-up. Cover-up by style, for sure, because it's written in such a boring style. You think this is all just a little off being normal. They didn't live up to the fealty of an FBI agent. What the hell is he talking about? The fealty of the FBI. They committed massive federal crimes. Everything. They fixed the Hillary Clinton case. They closed 4 more cases that would put Hillary in jail and possibly Bill for 50 years. It closed down the investigation of the entirely crooked Clinton Foundation. Just closed it down. 4 different officers complained, and McCabe said, "Go screw yourself." You should be sitting in jail for that. Let's get to that's the problem with the whole thing, with the whole report. Nobody's been held accountable. Not only has no one gone to jail, nobody's been held accountable. You can basically just do this and you get a bad report. Bad report. Oh, you were bad. You didn't live up to the usual way that we do it. They didn't follow the FBI standard. Oh, bad boys. Should you be investigated? I mean, criminally? No. Should you have your homes searched? No. That's only for Trump people like Giuliani and Roger Stone and Trump. We don't search high level Democrats. Gosh almighty. Look, we haven't searched. We've had the hard drive for 3-4 years. We haven't searched Hunter. It's got 50 crimes on it. We haven't searched. Got 50 crimes by the president. Gosh, we're not going to search Biden. You think we're going to try to figure out who really bought all those homes for Biden? Nah. No, we don't do that to Democrats. Republicans, we do that too. And if we don't find it, we try to frame them. A little different. We work for the regime. I'm talking about the FBI now. The FBI is not the FBI. It bears no resemblance to the FBI of yesteryear. It's much closer to the secret police of East Germany. Works for the regime entirely. Works for one political party. And not only doesn't work for the other political party, it tries to destroy the people who are the most effective in that political party. So, working back from there, Danchenko gives the information to Steele, and Steele hands it on to Glenn Simpson, because this is not an intelligence report. This is a paid-for bit of opposition research. And going to be very valuable opposition research because they pay over $1 million for it. And it's not that this was a secret. This was a secret from you, from me, from Trump, from the American people, as was many of the things they did that they covered up. But now we find out what we always knew, that the prince is just as crooked as they are. Oh, I know people are going to object to this, but this whole operation rots from the top. And the top was Obama. Obama from Chicago. Obama, whose home was given to him under extraordinarily unethical, and that's the nicest thing you can say, situation. A guy whose background was never really checked. Lots of strange stuff in his background. Student of Saul Alinsky, major communist. Nobody ever examined that. Sat in a church that talked about destroying damn America, goddamn America. Nobody examined that either. Walking around now, I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's awful close. Wonder how we made all that money. And then his administration had a vice president that was kind of raping the world for money and getting most of it from enemies of the United States. Almost everything in the hard drive is a national security issue. Unless Obama really did sleep away most of his days, as some people say, he had to have been briefed on it. I don't know, when the son of your vice president is working for the most crooked man in Ukraine at a time in which Ukraine is broke and has just been invaded by Russia, I would think you'd be told about it and told about the issue that it creates, particularly since you put him there to straighten out corruption. Now his son is working for the most crooked company in Ukraine that was created illegally by a government official who's very close to Putin. And the son of your vice president is working for him, who has just been kicked out of the military for being a drug addict. But Obama didn't ask a single question about it. Well, we don't know if he asked a question about it. What we know is he didn't do anything about it. He helped to cover it up. It's impossible in an honest White House, governor's office, or mayor's office that the man wouldn't be called in and asked, what the hell is your son doing? But obviously what the son was doing didn't require that response from Obama because it was de rigueur in their administration. It was what the heck? You're in government. You come from Chicago. Guy wants to make money. I mean, he has to have known that Biden was a crooked senator all his life. Everybody else did. Small scale. He was using his brother as lobbyists, bagmen. Nobody knew quite the scope of it, but everybody knew he was unethical. He even warned us when he first came into office that he was unethical. I'll find you that quote a little later, okay? It's true. He predicted it. You have no idea if I'm not unethical. Well, now we got an idea, Joe. You're not just unethical, you're a big damn crook. So here's what it establishes, right? It establishes that this whole thing began with Papadopoulos having a conversation with an Australian diplomat that looks very much like a setup, in which he makes the most ambiguous statement you could possibly make, that the Russians may help the Trump campaign by releasing bad information about Hillary. He doesn't know if Trump knows about it. Doesn't know if the Trump campaign is really aware of it. Doesn't know if the Russians really are going to do it, and doesn't know if it's really true. Oh, that's correct. That's all correct. The guy who picked this up and held it for a while and nursed it is a maniacal Trump hater. That he brings it to the FBI and it gets to McCabe and Strzok, just the two people that, are looking for something to do to Trump because they had to investigate Hillary. And from the beginning, it was clear they're going to fix that case, no matter how many crimes she committed. The boss sure made that clear when he made that statement publicly that she didn't do anything wrong, and he knew that. But they didn't need that because both McCabe and Strzok are thoroughly corrupt. Why would they be working for CNN if they weren't thoroughly corrupt, right? And so the Hillary investigation was a foregone conclusion. The thing that he does bring out is they not only fixed a big investigation that we knew about, there's a lot more stuff they fixed on the Clintons. I mean, there were all kinds of allegations about the Clintons and about the Clinton Foundation coming up all through the FBI. McCabe killed all of it once with a big fight with other FBI agents. I mean, they were just entirely corrupt agents of the most corrupt administration in history, unless Biden is more corrupt. That's Clinton, the Clinton administration. And then they protected like hell the cash cow Clinton Foundation. They closed down the investigation of it. And when information came in that the Russians were colluding with her administration, were giving donations and other things, they didn't investigate
Hillary. Nothing to see here. That's the
her.
reaction from some Democrats to Special Counsel John Durham's report on the investigation of President Trump in Russia. Durham says the FBI treated the Trump and Clinton campaigns very differently during the 2016 election.
It was
using considerable caution with Clinton.
It was the conversation with Papadopoulos that led to immediately the opening of the investigation. Now they don't get this. This is not in the report. And I'm going to tell you what's not there, and I don't know if this is because the investigators never got it, right? Durham never got it, or they covered it up. That whole thing with Papadopoulos, they presented as if it happened, just happened. It didn't just happen. There's no question in my mind it was set up by the CIA. When you see the characters that are involved in it and the machinations in which it was done. And it's a typical CIA plot. Create the information that brings you the investigation that you want. You would have thought they would have created it as stronger than they did, but they had only Papadopoulos to work with, who was a very low-level Trump person. In fact, it's extraordinary that they premised an investigation on such a low-level figure. Agents who originally evaluated said that it was nothing to this. But that wasn't going to dissuade Crooked McCabe and Crooked Strug. They went ahead and they didn't open a preliminary investigation to weigh the credibility of this very, very vague statement. They opened a full investigation immediately. I don't think that I can ever remember an FBI investigation, a full investigation being opened on this kind of bullshit. Ever. Certainly not of a major person and a presidential candidate in the middle of a campaign while they were closing down investigations of Clinton left and right. Boom, boom, boom. Closing down investigations of illegal contributions from Russia, closing down investigations about illegal contacts, closing down investigations about using the Clinton Foundation as a massive multi-million-dollar slush fund, and also the overlap between that and using it for politics, as well as major personal expenses like possibly paying for the daughter's wedding. I don't know if that's true, but I'm telling you, they never investigated it. And so Clinton doesn't get investigated at all, and Trump gets investigated on the most tenuous allegation, which, even if it were going to be taken seriously, Durham lists several things that normally are done, none of which are done. They don't they never talk to the underlying sources to evaluate them. They never check contemporaneous intelligence. They never use their usual analytical tools, lie detector tests, things like that, to check it. And then Durham falls into their trap, which Comey used in a very dishonest way when he testified, which is, well, there's the kind of information you can't corroborate. Well, that's if you don't want to corroborate it. Don't tell me you can't corroborate it. I could have corroborated it or not, very, very simply, right? It says in the information that they eventually get, right, in the Steele dossier, that Michael Cohen made a trip to Prague to talk to Russian agents. So you put yourself in the position of McCabe or Strzok, and you're an honest FBI agent, not massive crook like they are. And you desperately want to corroborate this because it sounds funny. It sounds really ridiculous. I mean, Papadopoulos doesn't even know if it happened, doesn't know if the Russians are involved. Durham leaves out of his report completely that they were trying to seduce him with a beautiful Russian woman, that the Australian ambassador or whatever the hell he was, Downer, had held this information for months trying to make it better. The guy hated Trump. He leaves this all out. Or he doesn't really draw any conclusions from it. What is he, a dope? So here I am. I've got this kind of piece of crap allegation from Papadopoulos. Then I get my first. Well, let's just see what happened. What happened is they immediately began investigating. They did no investigating. Investigation was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton. The investigation was the Steele dossier. With the little bit of crappy information they had, They went to a judge to try to get a FISA warrant against Page and Papadopoulos, meaning they wanted to intrude into their private lives, smash their Fourth Amendment right to be secure in their homes, based on this information imperiled the national security of the United States. I happen to know this area of the law really well because in some senses I participated in creating it. I helped to put together the first FISA's team. And then in the Reagan administration, I handled FISA applications, mostly with regard to Russian spies. So I'm not talking to you here off the top of my head. I'm talking to you over many nights of all-nighters going through affidavits very, very carefully because I was the final word, or the guy I was editing was the final word, or the guy editing me was the final word. So, you get a little bit of a change, even one that you don't think is that significant. You feel duty bound if you have a conscience to report it. Then if there's a change while the thing's going on and you go back, you change it. They didn't do any of that. They just lied. But the first time they went to get the affidavit, to get the warrant, the judge turned him down. You don't have enough. Well, remember there was a discussion many, many times and I think the biggest liar in Washington, Shifty Schiff, said, well, the Steele affidavit wasn't the major. There were other things. It was really not the Steele affidavit. Or that idiot from New York who you can hardly see. What's his name? He used to be 440 pounds and now he's 14 pounds.
You're talking about Al Sharpton, Mayor?
No. He's not related to Al Sharpton. The congressman. The congressman. Maybe
I believe he might even be your congressman, Mr. Jerry Nadler.
Oh, gee, how could I forget Jerry? You know why?
Because Midtown Manhattan.
I can't see Jerry anymore. When I knew Jerry, he was a good, solid 450 and 4'6". He was a bit of a lightweight intellectually and a heavyweight otherwise, and a very silly liberal. He is now a major danger to the Republic because of the lies that he tells and the things that he does to make himself important, which is really, really hard because he just isn't important. He's too damn untalented and dishonest to be important. But Jerry Nadler and all these people, jumped on this right away and changed all their positions on everything. I mean, they were in favor of impeachment. He was against it with Clinton. I mean, it gets to be ridiculous. It gets to be totally ridiculous what happened. But the FBI is the most to get shocked that a New York congressman is a crook is to be a child, be a naive child. To get shocked that the FBI at the highest levels is thoroughly corrupt. And for 6 or 7 years now has been working just for one political party and has attempted to fix and succeeded in fixing one of two presidential elections is mind-boggling. It's beyond anything that will, if we don't cure it, allow this republic to exist much longer. The facts here are described in a very low-key way, not really examined thoroughly by Durham, even though he took forever to do it. His report is massively too little and disastrously too late. Massively too little because he doesn't really find all the crimes that were committed here. I mean, he cuts them off. He writes down a few of the facts, but doesn't draw the conclusions. And then it's disastrously too late because most of this could have been presented before this country was afflicted with Joe Biden. Just think of all the people that would have lived and are now dead if the FBI weren't crooked. Think Ukraine would have happened? Those people would be alive today. Think all those people in Afghanistan would be dead? Think we'd still have the Bagram Air Base so that if China ever attacked us, we had a base 400 miles from them? You're darn right. What about all the people, the 3 to 4 times more people dead of fentanyl that wouldn't be dead if we had a reasonably closed border? I'm not just saying like under Trump, like under every other president. And how do we know we wouldn't have this crime epidemic under a reasonable president? We didn't have it under Trump. And this guy encouraged it. I mean, all he does is say that our country is systemically racist, and it's clear that he empowers all these DAs. They're all Democrats who get their money from his chief funder, Soros, and they put the criminals out on the street who'll kill you. You realize the damage that was done by stealing, or trying to steal one and then stealing the other election? Oh, and wait a second, just in case you want to cut me off on one of these social networks, I'm not talking about stealing the election at the ballot box. Although I don't know why anybody would be so shocked that a group of criminals like this wouldn't do that. They've done everything else short of killing them. Committed every crime imaginable. But I'm not talking about that. We can talk about that at some other occasion. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I would never say that. They'd have to, even if they tortured me, I don't think I'd say it. I'd hope I'd be able to withstand torture. I don't know. John McCain told me that nobody can really ultimately withstand torture. So I got to defer to John, because whatever else you think of John, he was a friend of mine. And I compartmentalize how I see people, because if I ever saw people completely, I would never see a perfect person except for Jesus Christ. Now, there are some people who have attempted, like reporters, to tell me they were perfect, but one reporter, I will not say who it was, when I said to him, he said, how can you support Trump after all those bad things he said on the Billy Bush tape? I said, you probably said things like that at some time. He said, I never did. I said, well, now I know 2 perfect people, you and Jesus Christ. I don't look at people that way. But this case cries out for accountability. Final one, that's the biggest shocker of all. And not that it's new. We've known this since before the election. But just biggest shocker, because you got to read this 50 times before it really sinks in with you if you believe in honest government. So in the summer of 2016, in the middle of the hotly contested 2016 election, the scummiest, most disgusting CIA director in history, Peter Brennan, one who signed a letter basically saying that I was a Russian agent, which is an absolute total lie, and he knew it. Not just me, but I was the one that got mentioned in the debate, which was all prepared for. He gets information. Now, let me try to stay as close to the report as possible. He gets information that the Democratic candidate for president is developing a plot, a scheme, a dirty trick in which she's going to tie Trump to Putin and the Russians, and falsely lay out a whole scenario that the Russians were interfering on Trump's behalf, and that she's going to do it to take attention away from the crimes that she committed, that many of which Comey let her off the hook, but nobody believed it. I mean, once Comey finished, it was clear she committed all those crimes. He just wasn't going to prosecute her. Plus, She also lived through that campaign with the constant fear that all the other crimes that the FBI was finding out about, where they were closing this case and that case and this case and that case, and all the crimes committed by the Clinton Foundation, she's living with the fear that that's going to come out. So she had to come up with something that could cover it. So they were going to develop a corruption thing on Trump. And she paid a bare minimum $1.1 million. I am certain, but cannot prove. So therefore, I'm only going to give you the general theory for further investigation, that considerably more money was involved and more people put money in. And I think in one case, I know exactly who put the money in. And it would take you just a few seconds to figure it out. But we do know for sure $1.1 million was given to our law firm, Perkins Coie, who then went to a sleazy investigatory firm called Global Strategies. The main principal being a gentleman named Glenn Simpson, a former scummy reporter for the Wall Street Journal. And they were going to develop what we call in politics Oppo research on Trump, specifically connections with Russia to fix the election. Oppo research means opposition research. Usually it's of a different nature. Usually Oppo research, as I've seen it, is they do basically a background check of the opponent to see what he's, when the Godfather says to one of his men about the Turk, go look under his fingernails, see what we got on him. That's what they do. They go look under your fingernails. This was a little different. This was not trying to figure out what Trump did wrong in the past. This was to make up something he was not doing wrong now, but make it appear as if he was, in order to destroy his candidacy. So it goes from Perkins Coie. This is the way, Biden does it, like through 5 banks. You always do it that way, right? So this goes from Perkins Coie, the law firm, to Global Strategies, the investigatory firm. And then it goes out on the street, mostly in Ukraine, and they come up with Glenn Simpson. They come up with Steele, who is a broken down 17-year-ago asset of some kind, never really determined how much he was worth. Clearly a liar, because he lies to them in the middle of it, and not worth much because he hadn't, I don't exactly know why they hired him, because he hadn't been in Russia in 17 years. So we're going to finish this part. He has a friend named Yuri Danchenko, who is probably a Russian spy, was investigated for being a Russian spy, also worked as an informant for this FBI. FBI didn't know if he was working as an informant for them or double dealing them, and never resolved the investigation. Although they gave him a lot of money, which is not unusual for the FBI to waste your money on useless people who fool them. But he goes to Danchenko for the information that he needs because he doesn't know anything about Russia. Danchenko feeds him all this information, which includes Trump peeing on Obama's bed and being a Russian agent for 10 years and all this stuff in this Steele dossier. But it turns out that even Danchenko, it doesn't come from him because he hasn't been in Russia in years. So he gets it from a guy named Dolan, and Dolan is a Democrat Party operative who just happens to know Russia. And he gets some of it from a woman named Galkina. So in the long run, this is hearsay, and we never know the ultimate source. And final end result of it is Danchenko says, I am responsible for 80%. Dolan, when questioned, first lies to the FBI and says, I didn't supply anything. Then he realizing he might get in trouble, he wouldn't have. He tells the truth that, in fact, he did supply information. So there's another guy that lied to them. And when they confront Danchenko says, Dolan never gave me any information. So he lies to them, too. But the FBI goes ahead and gives him like $100,000 a month anyway. Why? To keep his mouth shut. Because this thing stinks to high heaven, right? Now, there's a lot more to the investigation. But the big question is more important than the rest of the investigation. No one, not a single one of these crooks who committed a major crime here, right? They concocted a false plot used to prevent a person from becoming president, a major candidate. And then when it didn't work, they used it to try to remove illegally and based on false evidence a sitting president of the United States, which, if it isn't treason, is sedition. And that would apply to all people who knew about it, the president of the United States, the vice president of the United States, the attorney general of the United States, Susan Rice, who tried to fix up a memo to make it look like Obama was telling them to do what they're supposed to do. Well, he did tell them to do what they're supposed to do. Do what Democrats are supposed to do, which is to cheat and steal. This doesn't involve just Hillary Clinton and Comey, but they get away with it too. Comey gets to lie to the FISA court. I don't have the time to go through all the lies in the FISA documents. Everybody involved in it should be in prison right now. Everybody should, there's a lot of room. They just let the January 6th people in and put them in. You want an insurrection? It wasn't the people that went into the Capitol without guns. Nobody does an insurrection without guns, except if you can do it through the artifice of legality that is actually illegal, the way they do it in communist countries. That's what they were doing. They were trying to overturn a government with a false, phony impeachment. No consequences for it. So, and then a final conclusion that's pathetic with regard to the severity of what happened here. It raises the question, as many have asked, could it happen again? The answer, it has happened again. Since that all was discovered, since that all has been laid out, since the question of whether they'd be prosecuted was prematurely answered by Barr, no, in 2020. Just why Fatso had to do that, I don't know. You go ask him why he had to announce in 2020, before the investigation was over, why they weren't going to be investigated, being prosecuted. Now, for him to decide that, it must have been over. If it was over, why didn't they give it to the public? Gee, because it might have elected Trump, huh? The same reason the Barr was covering up the hard drive. And why is he in jail for that? Why isn't Ray in jail for that? And the FBI agents who withheld the hard drive. But because McCabe and Strzok's mistress and whatever and ever never got prosecuted for clear perjury, these people felt very comfortable covering up the hard drive. They did it again. It's the FBI who did it again. They tried to fix 2016 with the Russian plot that was paid for 1.1 million plus more. And then they tried to and succeeded in fixing 2020 by covering up the hard drive with a conspiracy involving hundreds of them and the press. They felt no compunction doing that. I don't know. Don't you ask yourself if McCabe and Strzok had been prosecuted, if they had pursued the involvement of Obama, Susan Rice, and Biden? You think they would have had the guts to go do it again? That's how we stop crime in America. We prosecute it and we deter it, or we don't prosecute it and we encourage it. Going on all over America right now, based on Biden and Soros. Maybe you know somebody who's been robbed or killed because of that. So, did this guy let us down? Guy shouldn't show his face anywhere near an American flag. Pathetically too little and destructively too late. That's what you can say about this. And a discredit to our republic. And he dishonored his profession and his country. Disgraceful, Durham. Disgraceful. So that's what we have to say about that. If you want more details or you want to question me about it, I would go to rudygiulianics.com, where we lay out the documents and we go into the actual words of the report so that you can understand it in a little more depth. And I paraphrased here, and to the extent that I made a mistake in paraphrasing, you be guided by the written word that's in the podcast. I told Ted today, I think podcasts are like the columns of yesteryear. Reporters or columnists would write columns about their opinion. Now I think people like to listen to podcasts to either develop their own opinions or to argue with opinions. And boy, do I think they're necessary in an era of fixed, censored news. They're saving us. All that. I don't just mean me. I mean me multiplied by 1,000. People who do live streams, people who do podcasts, they're saving us. Because if you got to stick with these, these newspapers are disgraceful. If they tell you half the truth, it's the half truth they tell you is distorted, and they leave out the rest of the truth. So,
should we play our sponsor, Mayor?
Well, I think it's a good time to play our sponsor, because it's a good time to really consider contacting our sponsor, given what the hell this guy's doing to our economy. Please, do me a favor. Will you please contact him? It'll make me feel better. It'll make me feel like I did the right thing, so you get the right advice. Kirk will be on, I guess, tomorrow night, right?
Tomorrow.
He's usually on Thursdays. Last week he came on Friday. I really suggest you tune in tomorrow night, because even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes, the 5 or 10 minutes with Kirk is worth a lot in terms of economic advice and what to do about this terrible, very almost unpredictable economy. So let's listen to Kirk and don't just listen. This time, make a call and find out. I don't do hard sells. I'm not pushing you to do it. I am pushing you to make the call, though. And I've been told by a lot of the people who have, they're very courteous and very helpful, whether you decide yes or no, or you put it off a bit. Hello, Getter people. Faith and family, freedom and finance are 4 things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver, while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. Or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy. What the hell does she look like with her makeup on? Wow.
Good
Wow.
morning
I know,
and
guys. Come on.
welcome
Wow.
back.
Wow.
We're
Every time we have Cara on, or Maria, or Justine, our ratings go up 20%. I'm telling you, right? Right?
That's right. And now we want to.
And then it goes back to us. They all turn off.
That's right. So we want to welcome.
They send us things like, why don't you guys stay on radio?
We want to welcome a friend of the show, really, Cara Castronuova, investigative journalist, television personality, and champion boxer.
Par excellence, a terrific co-host of I think one of the most unusual shows on television. Tell us about that show just for a second before we get into this.
It's called Wise
this stuff
Guys.
that I find disgusting.
Yeah, it's on Newsmax with John Tobacco, and you were on our show multiple times, and you fit right in.
I wish John is on all the time. I just love it. It's so much fun.
It's fun. We do it at a restaurant. We talk about the politics of the week, but we do it over food and drinks.
Yeah, but you know what they do is they take it isn't. Sometimes you have like a funny thing, a funny segment, but mostly you take a serious issue, like I was just talking about now.
Right.
But you have like the kind of conversation we'd have at a Thanksgiving Day table or something.
Exactly. We try to make it fun and digestible and not so serious, but about serious stuff.
Yeah, and you have good people, and you two are hilarious together.
So you could see that at 10 p.m. on Newsmax. And
she's also, and we've had her on this issue and will again, because it may be the civil rights issue of our day, and that is the incarceration of the January 6 people for a year and a half, more than that, without trial.
Over 2 years.
Yeah, for sometimes crimes no more serious than trespass. And then when you finally look at the tapes, you said, that's what they did? It's terrible.
Right. It's terrible. I started Citizens Against Political Persecution, and you're politically persecuted, so I fight for you too.
I know you do. I am. I mean, I hate to say it. I've never been a victim. I don't like to be a victim. I don't like to make myself a victim. But I do think I've been talked into it in a way, because I have a microphone, and I can point out how I've been victimized, when a lot of these people who are sitting behind bars can't.
Right.
I mean, you got to create a microphone, which you do, but it's hard when you are famous, and you have an obligation when something like this happens to speak out about it, because I know Trump often says, if they can do it to me, they can do it to you. Well,
right.
Well, if he was pointing to me, he's right. If they can do it to him, they have done it to me.
Right. Right. So if we're talking about your case now.
Yeah. This case is out of the blue. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I don't want to go into all the details of it, because I give it more credit than it deserves if I do that. It's a kind of a tragedy, because the person involved is a disturbed person. Right. But you go ahead. You describe it, and because anything I say is probably seen as somewhat prejudiced.
Right. So I mean, obviously, I'm not going to hide the fact that we're friends, but I feel like I know you pretty well. And I also follow my gut instinct. And when I read the lawsuit against you, I could see all of the holes in it, all of the lies. So I dug deeper, and I looked into some old court documents that I found a lot. I'm going to publish that on Gateway Pundit. A lot of these things as they come out. But the person who's suing you, the female Noelle Dunphy, has a crazy record. I mean, she has an arrest record. She's been arrested for assault. She sued men, like you have mentioned, that other men that were wealthy. I have actually, I don't want to read the gentleman's name, because this poor guy, his life was literally destroyed by her. The gentleman, let's not read his name yet.
Was that the guy that did the article in the
there was an article in the New York Post.
In the Post. Okay.
Right. And
let's not mention his name.
He's been traumatized by this whole ordeal. As you can imagine, he has 3 young daughters. She basically accused him of some really hideous crimes.
She accused him. I mean, it was at least, as far as I know, her second accusation of rape.
Her second and possibly third, because according to, and I'm not saying this because I know this is a person who likes to sue people, but according to court documents that I pulled up, she had bragged to another person about a third man that she had actually said that she got $5 million from.
That one I know about, because she told me about it. And she wanted my help to give her legal advice. And when I looked at the papers, in fact, I was surprised she gave me the papers.
Yeah, I mean, like, she's crazy.
I saw her. I probably you have more than I had, but she had this situation where she shook a guy down for, I think it really turned out to be $1 million. And she claimed he raped her. He's the son of a very wealthy man.
Right.
And they gave her $1 million, and her ex-boyfriend, who's suing her here, and this is an affidavit under oath, says that she told him that she faked the rape in order to get the money.
Exactly. And then he actually went to family court because she had gotten an order of protection against him, which he felt like, obviously was bad for his name. So the judge dismissed the temporary order of protection. And if you actually read this, I'm going to post this up tomorrow on Gateway Pundit. It's like a 112-page transcript. Literally, I felt like I was reading the most like Judge Judy. It sort of reminded me of Amber Heard. She reminds me a little bit of Amber Heard. I don't know if you followed the Johnny Depp trial, but you.
I did. I mean,
you might be the new Johnny Depp.
Rudy. I mean, vaguely, I did follow it. Yes,
right, like this judge was not hearing any of her BS. This judge just kept telling her, "Please answer in your yes or no." She all but accused her of basically lying, and in the end, I want to read this at the end when she basically says, "Let me read this. Why don't you talk for a second while I find this?"
Well, I mean, the reality is that it shocks me that although Cara has done this deep research to go into the actual documents, the press had available the night that they published this just about me, the article in the New York Post that has the ex boyfriend who gave his name to them. He didn't become a source, and in that he alleged that she made false allegations of rape against him.
She's absolutely crazy.
That she made false allegations of rape against this rich guy, that he caught her doing, what do you call that? Escort services for people.
And he alleged that there was a charity that she started.
He believed that she was defrauding a charity. And that at one point when he confronted her over something, she hit him and his daughter.
Right.
That's what I recall from that.
That's documented within.
He
alleged. This is in the court documents. We are not alleging this, but this is what he alleged, and that's
this is what he alleged under oath in the court documents.
And with the New York NYPD, that there's a police report that she
and what the New York Post published publicly,
and the New York NYPD.
Yeah, and in the article about me, that's never mentioned. It's as if Mary the Virgin sued me.
I want to read you this,
and not someone who makes. It appears from this a habit of doing this and makes her living this way.
Let me read you what the judge said to her at the end of this hearing. She said this to her, and this was a young female judge, by the way, who saw right through her. She said that I found that on direct, and this is her saying to the woman who's suing you. She was very clear and answered questions. On cross-examination, she was very evasive. Many times the testimony was disjointed. Frankly, it just didn't make sense. She was all over the place. I just find it interesting that she was able to convey her position on direct and answer questions, but when it came to cross-examination, she was extremely evasive and she didn't answer the questions. As I said, it was a disjointed testimony. It lacked specificity, and it was extremely incredulous at points. There was one point when she put her head down with her hands over her face, and she moved her body as though she was crying. But when she put her hands down, there was absolutely no tears. She had dry eyes. She was totally fine in an instant and back to her prior demeanor. I found that to be very strange and also indicating that those were fake tears and nothing really going on there. Her demeanor and her manner in testifying was just not credible. I watched her very carefully and I studied her very carefully. Even when I asked her questions, she could not give a straight answer. I was stunned by the fact that she's a Columbia University graduate. I believed she said her major was creative writing and that she was not able to understand a simple question. There's no rocket science going on here. They were basic questions and she was all over the place. To me, that made her extremely incredible. She was just not believable and it didn't make sense. So it goes on and it goes on to her basically saying that, on the other hand, when the respondent testified, he was very clear and he spoke in a direct manner. So she basically threw the case out of court. She said, I have the opposite view with respect to the petitioner's testimony, having found her not to be credible, not believable, and I would agree with the summation, fantastical in the manner in which she testified. This petition is dismissed. I am not able to find to make a finding having found that the petitioner just lacks credibility. The temporary order of protection is also dismissed and vacated. So that's like basically a judge in New York, a female judge who, you know, I would think that would give another female the benefit of the doubt, basically calling her a non-credible witness. So I don't think she wants to go to trial with you, Rudy, because I think that, you know, the media is going to cover it, and I don't think she's going to look credible. She doesn't come across as credible. I read through this 112-page document, which was from the courtroom, and she couldn't answer a yes or no question.
At one point, she tried to reopen this proceeding. She had a whole another big thing, and she got examined by a psychiatrist.
Right.
And this is also under oath. It's written by her under oath, under penalties of perjury. And like the gentleman that she got the $1 million from, like the gentleman she sued here, this guy was sexually abusive to her also. According to this, during the second session, Dr. Brown, obviously attempting to test my sizes again, laid his hands upon me. He moved uncomfortably close to me. He put his hands on my body. He put his hands on my face, and he touched my face. He even got close enough and low enough on me to start touching my feet. I screamed loudly.
So that's a doctor? Or no,
that's a doctor person? Who, of course, denies it, and there's no one that witnessed any of this. And there are, and I'm giving you 3 examples. There are many, many, many more. Now, it's one thing, you know, when somebody sues you and there's a dispute, and it could be this way, it could be. It's another thing when you get sued by a professional suer.
Right.
And the press doesn't even point that out. But I also find it totally obvious that she included in it an allegation that I told her to see if she could get $2 million from people who wanted pardons, and that President Trump would share it with me. Now, there is also evidence that we found that starting about a year ago, she began this really crazy, maniacal obsession with President Trump. And her first complaint was thrown out because it was incomprehensible. Nothing about President Trump in it. She writes the second one with these allegations about President Trump. She's got a law firm. It's written very well. She's got a public relations firm. So there's a question as to who paid for it.
Right.
But I mean, there's a whole political element to this that we're not.
I just want to point this one last thing out. She was countersued by one of the gentlemen, and he used RICO. Now, you're an attorney. Maybe you could understand this, but he countersued her saying she racketeers, and this is a pattern. So he actually used RICO, which I know you're familiar with. So
yeah, I remember reading this. This brings up, and some of it he didn't put out publicly because he was still a gentleman, I guess. Thank God for him. I mean, the fact that he's willing to come forward, but also basically he's saying her racketeering activities is extorting money from men with allegations like this.
Right.
And there was a long period in which she was calling me for money, and her lawyer told my lawyer that they would, you know, they were going to put all these things in the lawsuit unless.
Right.
And then they sent us 2 tapes that purported to show nothing.
Right, I heard about that.
You know, one of them was actually, I won't go. One of them I would like to use. It's exculpatory.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on.
I mean, she's been accused of blackmail by other people, and that's in the court docket. That's not me saying that's in the court docket.
At least that should a decent reporter to balance this. These are terrible for your reputation. Something like this. If you're getting sued by an innocent person, it's one thing. If you're getting sued by a person that was in trouble once, it's another thing. Once you can be in trouble. But if you're getting in trouble for a person who's demonstrated over 20 years, this is what they do to support themselves. My God, somebody should do something about that.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm trying.
Thank you.
That's why I'm trying.
Thank you. And you know, when I tell you it can happen to you, it can happen to you because we've lost our system of justice in this country. And I'm not even saying here it's the courts. I mean, this judge obviously handled this fine. In many ways, it's the press. You know, 20 years ago, the press wouldn't have covered this case this way. 20 years ago, the press, first of all, on an allegation like this, they would have waited.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have waited. They wouldn't have gone with it right away. Boom, let's get our case. They'd have gone and investigate. How true is it? It's like when I was U.S. attorney, we never brought cases involving perjury and matrimonial cases because it's so fraught with emotion and confusion that you use discretion not to get involved in things like this because the system of justice is too important. So you get an allegation like this, and let's change it now and make it, Ted gets sued. Poor Ted gets sued, and these terrible allegations are made about going out and trying to get money illegally and abuse and that sort of stuff.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
Bad guy. Sounds like a
and
real
then
bad
somebody
guy.
that you don't know makes the allegation, and it does appear to be one-on-one, although the person says they have tapes. And I can tell you, the tapes that I've seen go the other way, just like the whole case does. And then there's a whole issue about the legality of them.
Yes. Yes.
But in any event, you go and investigate it. You do your due diligence. You investigate Ted, you investigate her, and you look and you see, have allegations like this been made against Ted in the past? And they either were or weren't, but in Ted's case, they weren't. And then you see, well, has she made allegations like this? Is there any kind of analysis of her credibility? And then you report it. You report both sides. You don't just report one side and make it look terrible because the person supports Donald Trump and because she put Donald Trump in the case and said that I asked for $2 million. I'm not even going to dignify that with telling you that that's so totally not me. I put people in jail for doing that. I've done it all my life, and I'm proud of it. I do get upset when these things are done to my reputation because it's enormously important to me. But I've gotten used to the fact that I'm serving something more important, and this is the price of doing it. And what I'm serving is the truth, and trying to get the system of justice that I love from the day I walked into law school, maybe from the day I heard about it. I'm trying to get it back to where it used to be. I mean, during a presidential campaign when I was U.S. attorney in the summer before the election, people came to me with an allegation against the Democratic Party vice presidential candidate, and they wanted me to begin an investigation of it. I looked at it, and this is even before there was this clear rule about not investigating, within 6 months or 3 months or whatever the rule is. I looked at it, and I always had a conference on these things with my staff because this was volatile. I confined it to my most trusted people. The FBI was involved, a different FBI though. And we came to the conclusion that number one, there's nothing here that we couldn't investigate in 4 months. So I'm not sure to this day, but I just came to the conclusion that either I was being had by Republicans, and I'm a Republican, but I'm not going to let them do that to me either. I've had Republicans try to importune me, and the same thing happens to them. They either get smashed in the mouth if it's that kind of thing, or they get investigated. When I was U.S. attorney, prosecuted Republicans and Democrats. We both have crooks. Just so happens now that in fact, when I was U.S. attorney, it was pretty darn even. Remember, I did an investigation of highway commissioners all throughout the state of New York, and we convicted 48 of 49. It was about equal number of Republicans and Democrats. The one guy we didn't convict, and I can't remember if he was a Republican or a Democrat, refused to take the bribe. You know why? Wasn't enough money. I think it was 20 grand we were offering. So it took everything, all the power and all of the persuasion and all of the contacts I had to get the FBI to come up with 40 grand. Because I said, you give him 40 grand, he's going to take it. He did. And then he claimed entrapment at trial. But we convicted him. And I think it was an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. And, and the Republicans were angry at me and the Democrats were angry at me because it demonstrated that the state was entirely corrupt, both parties. It's not we're going through right now, we're going through a very bad period for the Democrat Party and I think it started with Clinton, because the Clintons are massive thieves. These are trash. These are basic white trash from trailer trash who were taking little graft here and there. When he became attorney general, she went to a law firm. They were putting money in a law firm. He was selling everything that moved, also basically banging everything that moved. You go to Arizona, a lot of people look like Bill Clinton. And Arkansas, maybe Arizona too, I don't know, but he was basically in Arkansas. And he becomes president. And now they got McAuliffe in the Lincoln bedroom. McAuliffe, the guy that thinks that parents shouldn't have anything to do with education, just a state. And then when they got into the State Department and the Clinton Foundation, now we're talking about billionaires. Wow. You don't think that got other ones jealous? In particular, the Bidens. He was also trailer trash back in Delaware when he announced, that politics is corrupt. And who knows, maybe he'd be corrupt too, but he had all these people that were giving him money. I mean, this is the most extraordinary thing. And when you realize that you're talking about a dopey man, this is the kind of thing that a dopey man could give up when he doesn't want to, not necessarily a Freudian slip, but a slip. The way his son, don't you often wonder, how come his son moved this way a little? So why would his son lose these computers so often? We know that he's lost 3. He lost one that I got, or eventually got. John Mac Isaacs got it, but I got it out. He lost one with this psychiatrist, some psychiatrist, by the way. He leaves it with a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist gets busted by the FBI for having sex with his patients, taking advantage of them and having sex with his patients. They really hang around with great people. And there's his computer. But of course, the FBI never looks at the computer. They give it back to him. So there's a whole portion of his criminality in that computer. And then he lost a computer to a female who I think was pretending to be a prostitute, but was in fact an intelligence agent. And gosh almighty, I can't remember now if it was Russian or Chinese. I think Russian. So he kept losing these things. I can't help doing a psychobabble on this. I consider people who do psychiatric analysis who are not doctors of psychology or psychiatry, sort of like psychobabble. But everybody can do psychobabble. You think he wanted us to catch his father? What do you think? I can when we have time to deal with the more frivolous parts of the hard drive, I can give you some quotes that suggest that. Liked his uncle better. A couple of quotes there saying, Uncle James has always been much fairer with me, and Uncle James has always been more straight with me. About all that kind. Now, who knows if that's true? This is father, son, uncle, all massive crooks, all completely screwed up. So who knows if any of it's true? But it could have something. Now let's see if I can find this. It could have something. You're going to find this amazing when you hear this, because this goes back to, oh my goodness, this could be 1970. I don't remember when he was first elected. I remember being told by his law school classmate, who was my pal and eventually my chief of staff, that I had to run for the Senate in Delaware. Yeah. Ted. And I know now I'm telling the story too often.
No, not at all. It's one of my favorite stories.
But a lot of people may not know the story.
Of course, no, that was not a criticism.
I bet Cara doesn't know the story.
That was not a criticism. It's one of my favorite stories.
So my friend and chief of staff says to me, you should run for the Senate in Delaware. And I said, why should I run in Delaware? And he said, because anybody can get elected in Delaware. My friend from law school, who was the dumbest guy in a law school class, major jerk, just got elected. So if he could get elected, anybody could get elected. And you got to meet him. He's a great guy. He may be stupid as hell, and he cheated like crazy in law school. But you got to meet him. I said, well, what's his name? His name is Joe Biden. And I went and met him. I knew him for 30 years. And he lived up to his reputation of being the dumbest guy in law school, in the Senate, in the White House. Here's what I didn't think was true. And here he's telling us at the beginning of his career, watch out. Let's see if I have it up here the right way.
You put the mic on it too, Mayor. You put the mic close.
I will move the mic, as the director Ted says. And here it is.
What are you playing?
I'm going to be surprised. What am I playing? See, he's got to always...
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that. I think the American public, in a way, rips off we politicians by forcing us to run the way they do. To raise $300,000 is no mean feat. I went to the big guys for the money. I was ready to prostitute myself in the manner in which I talk about it. I was ready to prostitute myself.
That amazing statement. I was ready to prostitute, but I don't know if you heard the beginning. I don't think Ted heard the beginning. Just listen real carefully now at the very beginning. It comes on real fast. Just listen.
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that. I think the American public...
I don't think you should assume that I'm not corrupt, he said. And then he says, I did prostitute myself.
Freudian slip.
I did prostitute myself.
Yikes.
That's when he was a little, he was the guy going around the, going around for the $30 and the $50 and $100 and the $200 and he's going around the trailers collecting money. Then he gets into office and his brothers set up a business in which they do all kinds of lobbying. And then they start to make some big money. And then they started the foreign thing. And that's where they made a fortune. So you want a quick breakdown before we conclude? I mean, it's quick from the head, probably could be more. They got a third of a $1.5 billion deal in Iraq. James pulled that one in. That was a sellout of us in getting a status of forces agreement when he was point man. He made bare minimum $8 million from the most crooked man in Ukraine. And if the FBI were ever to interview the woman in Ukraine who claims that she has the foreign bank accounts that they've never interviewed, who knows? The prosecutor that told me he made something closer to 20 million maybe turned out to be right. In Russia, we know he made way north of 3.5 million, but we have that on record. And I am told there are other records of considerably more from Russia, but that's we got for sure. And then, of course, he made certifiable, provable by records and every other way possible 31.5 million in China. And then smaller amounts that aren't worth mentioning that would have constituted one of the most major bribes in the history of America in the past, like from Romania and Kazakhstan and 2 or 3 other places. But now we're talking about 500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, 2 million. I don't know what the Agnew bribe was, but I think it was $10,000. Agnew must be saying, man, wow. Well, in any event, Durham report, extremely disappointing because it reveals so much of how crooked the nation is right now. And with nothing being done about it, there isn't the slightest hope that I can offer you that it won't happen again. And then I have to tell you, it did happen again, which is another indication that it could happen again. It happened again. I mean, they were investigating, remember, they were investigating 2016 and trying to fix that election. They did nothing about that. And then Democrats went and fixed 2020 with withholding the hard drive. I don't know. Until we start putting them in jail and prosecuting them and not prosecuting innocent people or torturing innocent people or holding these people in prison like Cara was talking about before, we just are not going to be the country that we used to be. God willing, we're going to get back to that in 2024 with your help. That's what I'm counting on you for. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And we'll do a lot more. Well, God bless you. Thank you, Cara, for your help, not just on this, but all the wonderful things that you're doing. Thank you, Ted, for putting this all together, because he does a great, great job. And thank you for listening in. And we'll be back tomorrow night
from a special location.
Oh, tomorrow night from the location, from the undisclosed location. And but will also be on the radio tomorrow from the undisclosed location at 3:00. So you can get it. It's on WABCradio.com. And I think the podcast will be out tomorrow, right?
That's right.
That'll be RudyGiulianiCS.com. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll it'll prepare you for questions. And tomorrow night we'll have a lot more time for questions. So you store them up, and we'll be ready to answer them. Thank you very much, and God bless America. Our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. It was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense.